Well, thank you so much for calling too. I appreciate that. It's every single person that I've had. Well, not everybody. There was a couple times who the guys who came in making a prank call at that one time. But every serious caller we've had, I felt that it's been very productive, and I feel really good about what this format has been able to accomplish in that sense. It seems like it really is having a different kind of conversation. This is exactly what I wanted. I didn't know exactly how to have it happen, but it does. The intention is kind of has manifested, and I hope it keeps going. I mean, I really want to see more of these kinds of extreme positions brought into the discussion at this level, because I mean, this is what we have here. We've had these discussions with Neil, who comes from the Venus Project, and that whole zeitgeist perspective, and we've had the same. My friend Ellery Bakhtin on here, and he's this anarcho-capitalist guy, and we need to have more of these people talking to each other, because in the process of talking to each other, if we're talking like this, our opinions evolve naturally and naturally go to the next level, because it's that. I think regardless of whether you agree with the person or not, if you're in contact with a different idea, it inherently forces an ideological evolution, and I think that's actually the unfortunate thing about our current paradigm of ideas is when it's always combative, and there's never an exchange of this kind of table format in the public sphere. It actually stunts the evolution of ideas. Ideas don't actually develop in a natural, flowing way. I mean, we have a paradigm of war ideas as well. And we even say that. We say the war of ideas. I say it too. That's the thing. I consider myself in the war of ideas. But at the same time, there's a time and a place for the war of ideas, and there's also a time and a place for the family get-together of ideas, if that makes sense. We also have the other caller I promised to bring on. Let's see, is that 413? I'm going to go ahead and bring him on there here. 413. Can you hear us?
Hello?
Hey.
Hello? Oh, hi. I've actually been trying to call in for like 2 hours. It's okay. Anyways, I've been on other numbers, but yeah. I want to bring up a point someone made about how like libertarians aren't all united and like how we all like fight on issues and stuff. That's a good point to bring up. He said how the elite, they're all like basically going towards one idea, and that's true. They're going towards a one world government. But if you think about it, when they finally get their one world government, they finally cull the human herd, introduce the microchip. Do you think that's going to be it? I mean, there's still going to be a power struggle. These are like psychopathic people. There's still going to be a power struggle regardless. Like, who's going to be number one? Who's going to be in charge? There's going to be a big power struggle.
I'm not really concerned about one world government just because I know that it won't work. And I mean, I will fight against it. But at the same time, I look at it as if it goes that direction, it's just going to be going towards a collapse, an even bigger collapse. And they can create a collapse, and then they can re-engineer things, and they can do whatever. But in the end, you can't force everybody into the same ideological system. You can't force everybody into the same administrative system. And you come from a paradigm of force, and you try to monopolize and monoculture culture. It's gonna, and that's. I think it shows that they don't understand humanity very well. People who are pushing in that direction, the closer they get, the more their entire framework is unraveling, because they just look at globalism as an economic policy. Like, oh yes, we're going to create all this extra wealth and all these jobs by globalizing and globalization. I mean, I listen to these guys, especially. I remember back in the early, the late, before the crash in 2000. I mean, like these guys, it's just like this religion of like the new economy. And it's like, well, oops, that was complete BS. That didn't work. It's actually going to do the opposite. And I think the same thing applies for government. If they try, it's look at what's happening right now. This upsurging, and this revolution that's happening, where people are starting to talk about these kinds of things, are dissolving the underpinnings of their entire system, even as they're trying to construct it. So it's like you're trying to build a house, and somebody's basically letting termites loose on the first floor while you're putting on the third floor, and by the time the steeple on top, the whole thing is going to come crumbling down.
Well, exactly. I mean, of course, global government won't work. It'll eventually break down anyways. I mean, who's really going to deny someone to buy food? I mean,
it's a paradox.
So it'll break down like any government has in anything. Like, even if, like, for instance, even if the Americans didn't intervene in World War II, the Nazi government would have broke down anyways.
The thing is, I think it's this concept that people have a hard time letting go of finding an answer for everybody. I mean, it's like if you imagine if you were looking at the organs of a body, and if what it says, well, we just need everything to be a liver, well, let's just make all cells in the body liver cells because liver cells are the best, and so we don't need kidneys and we don't need lungs, and let's make everything a freaking liver. Well, that wouldn't work. It wouldn't work. It's not going to work. I mean, I think there's actually a necessity for survival when you look at things in terms of culture, in terms of biological systems, in terms of economy. Any kind of everything and put it under one roof and then make one system, you set it up for failure because inherently things shift, and then if everything is tied together, then it all comes falling down. Like if I'm remembering my history correctly, the Irish famine was due to the fact that they all got dependent on potatoes, and then there was a insect of some sort. I don't remember exactly what it was. There was some crop plague got the potatoes, and then suddenly everybody's, well, that was stupid. I mean, you should have had some variety, and that's what we're doing right now. Even if people don't believe in one world government, we are creating a global system that's totally tied to this one paradigm of money, which is completely BS, debt-based money, and we're creating these conglomerations of government that are less and less local and more farther and farther away from the people whose lives it's actually dominating, and that's not going in the right direction. We only have 5 minutes left. I'm going to bring on the last caller from the 810 area code. I'm not cutting off anyone else, but to just bring him on. So 810, who are we talking to?
This is Sue. I was wanting to just comment about the one person talking about the education system. The whole thing about that is not everybody's education system is the same. Property taxes is based on the education system that you get, and I am from an area that did not have a good education system. So, how are people like that getting the same info as anybody else?
Well, that's the thing. Like, I could tell you, if the schools that a person goes to is going to be the determining factor, then I wouldn't be here today, because I named some of the places where I grew up, and one of the schools the school that I actually graduated from was Waco High, which is a ghetto. It was an outright ghetto. It was a complete ghetto. The school was so messed up. Basically, at any given time, I could just tell the teacher I needed to go do something in the computer room, and because I was, fancy excuse, I could just disappear and go do whatever I wanted for the rest of the day. I mean, it was just an absolutely chaotic school. I don't credit my knowledge from the education system whatsoever. I went to college for years, and I just said, this is BS. People are trying to indoctrinate me, and I walked away, and I went, and I lived, people talk about thinking, yes, I had a lot of advantages from being from an American culture, but my education came from going and living and working on farms in different countries using the wolf system, which enables you to stay in countries without paying. You get room and board, and you work on a farm, and you get to learn a lot. You get to learn a new language. You get to learn the culture, and you get to learn the way people perceive the world, which is drastically different in different parts of the world. And that was the best education that anybody ever given me, and not free because I had to get the tickets, but it was way cheaper than the cheapest community college you could ever imagine, because, I mean, you just even just the books is more expensive than I paid for the tickets to go to these places when I was a kid. So it's a different paradigm. It's a totally different paradigm of education, totally different paradigm of learning, where we think that someone else has to give it to us and we have to pay them a bunch of money in order to learn, and that you have to take by force. And what we really is to have people, to have children in contact with each other, instead of putting a bunch of kids in these in institutions where you have these adults that are marginally capable of transmitting information, but certainly not capable of teaching kids how to actually live, are trying to force kids to regurgitate information. The whole thing is completely messed up. I didn't start learning until I got out of school and completely rejected the entire paradigm. That's when I actually started to understand learning how to learn. I had to completely unlearn what I thought learning was. And that's the thing. Like, people think that they're getting an education. They're not getting an education. They're getting an indoctrination. They're getting taught how to hate, really. And that's what they've actually done studies on this, showing that the way they deal with information in schools creates a distaste for kids. They just like the last thing they want to do when they get out of school is learn. Reject it. It's like yuck. So if you put it in front of a kid, hey, you want to learn a foreign language? Oh, yuck, I hated French in school. Oh, yuck, I hated Spanish. But learning a foreign language is the most exciting thing I can imagine. It was the best experience that I had, and you just don't get that experience. You want to give your...
Well, it was interesting to hear from an 810 caller, considering that's a Michigan area code, and I'm from Michigan. Not really a relevant point, just something that popped into my head. But I think that we've had a great conversation today, and I hope that it definitely sparks more thoughts in people's minds. I think that some of these ideas that that we're talking about, particularly about logical fallacies and basically researching into how people can control a dialogue in a way that prevents thinking, are critical, and it's going to be kind of a war. Like, I end up repeating myself about this quite a bit. Like, in my non-activist Facebook, I bring this up all the time because we have a lot of problems on our internet presence and some of my hobbies where there's a lot of people who are very aggressive to try to get their point across over something as stupid as a game. You see it on online forums for video games and things like that everywhere. And you have to just repeat it over and over and over and over and over and over again to get people to finally, wake up to it.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's one of the things. It's one of the main principles that Le Bon talks about. So these, assertion and repetition. Assertion and repetition is the first two principles, and they've actually shown that it works in both ways. It's actually not a moral force or an immoral force, but the reality of the matter is, if you repeat something long enough, people are going to start absorbing it if they don't have critical thinking skills. And I try to repeat critical thinking skills to hopefully immunize against that. But anything that has an effect around people, and unless people are coming from, which is, gosh, that's like an uphill battle.
Mm-hmm. For sure, and I think that it's one of the major points that we definitely have to develop as activists, that people need to learn about these things, because it's like, I have a friend I was trying to help educate recently, and I wanted him to watch War, and unfortunately I don't think he even possesses the mental faculties to really absorb it. It would take a long time for me to really get him to understand the depth at which he was being controlled. And that's the same friend I was talking about earlier, who's just totally absorbed in the conservative movement. And basically, I just kind of got to a point where I realized that people like him, unfortunately, are not going to change their viewpoint, absent a large group of other people doing so. And I think that that's not an inherent thing. I think it has to do with how children are raised. They have to be raised with certain critical and analytical thinking skills. I think it's hilarious actually to watch him talk about it because he's homosexual, yet is for some reason still totally conservative and supports all of these conservative people who are totally anti-gay. Wow. But he's so conditioned, you know, because that's how he was raised. You know, like his mom loved George Bush, you know, and he would get offended and angry if you talk bad about George Bush. He's starting to learn better, but you have to take a different approach with these people. Like he likes Jesse Ventura's conspiracy theory. So he's finally starting to open up to the idea that the right also has, you know, a huge contribution. And that's actually something I wanted to bring up at some point. Maybe we can do a whole show about this, but is the way that things are, you know, basically handled when people are trying to, you know, to paint one picture or another. Like there's a lot of people right now, for example, who are scared about losing their gun rights and they're scared about the Second Amendment. And then they start bringing up how Obama's a fascist because of NDAA or drone strikes or whatever. And, you know, and they're right about all that. The problem is that where the hell were these people when George Bush was signing the Patriot Act? You know, where the hell were these people who were pissed off about Benghazi when 9/11 happened? You know,
that's the problem, though, is that people are waiting. They're at the moments that they're actually triggering it for them. We have to actually take advantage of that and push it, and bring it back to the, you know, take it out of the left-right paradigm. And I don't think it actually works to when they come to your side to attack them. But I think it's like you have to kind of go, okay, yeah, we agree on this. That's our common ground, and now we have to understand that we can't afford to allow the left-right paradigm in anymore, because if we do, then we're going to get fooled again. It's basically what it seems to me.